Hi, this is Mohammad Munirjaman Iman. Today talking about my thesis and I'll explain all about my thesis and my thesis topic is sustainable practices in garments manufacturing and their impact on worker health and safety in Bangladesh. In this study, I focus on Bangladesh's ready-made garments industry because it is both economically significant and socially vulnerable. While this sector contributes heavily to export earning and employment, the research showed that economical growth has often come at the expense of worker well-being. I found that workers continue to face major occupational risks such as like heat stress, chemical explosions, poor ventilation, and lots of injuries. These issues are important because they affect not only the worker health but also productivity, labor stability, and international business reputation. I choose this topic because sustainability in RNG sector is often discussed from an environmental or business perspective, while the direct impact on the worker health and safety receives less attention. A major turning point of the industry was the disaster in 2013, which exposed a serious weakness in workplace safety and governance. Although reforms improved awareness and compliance standards, the literature suggests that implication remains consistent across factories. This led me to examine whether sustainability initiatives such as CHR and green supply chain management generously improve worker safety or mainly functions as compliance tools. The study therefore explores not only the relationships between the sustainability and worker outcomes but also why organizations adopt these practices and how external pressures influence their behavior. While reviewing the literature, I noticed a clear shift in research after 2013. Earlier studies mainly focused on labor explanation and basic safety failures, whereas more recent research considers sustainability with governance, worker welfare, and global supply chains. This was important because it shows that sustainability is no longer viewed only an environmental issue but also a social responsibility issue. I found that CSR and GSCM are frequently presented as solutions for improving both environmental performance and labor conditions. However, many studies also suggest that sustainability adoption differs significantly between large exporters and smaller factories, which become an important issue throughout my research. I selected legitimacy theory and stakeholder theory because together they help explain both organizational and behavior and external influence. Legitimacy theory was useful in understanding why firms adopt sustainability practices to protect reputation and maintaining global market access. Stakeholder theory helped explain the strong influence of buyers, NGOs regulations, and international consumers. I found these theories particularly relevant because my sustainability initiatives appear to driven more by external expectations than internal ethical commitment. This also highlighted an important research gap, although sustainability is widely promoted. This is still limited understanding of whether these practices create meaningful improvements in worker health and safety. I adopt an interpretivist philosophy because the research focused on understanding the complex organizational and social issues rather than the misusing numerical relationships. An inductive approach was appropriate since I wanted the themes and patterns to emerge from the literature instead of forcing the research into the predetermined assumptions. I chose a systematic literature review because it's allow me to critical compare finding across the multiple studies and identify recurring themselves. Focusing mainly on post 2013 research was also international as this period reflects major regulatory reforms and changing sustainability expectations with the Bangladeshi garment sector. The study relied on secondary qualitative data from academic journals, NGO reports, policy documents, and industry publications. I selected thematical analysis because it allowed me to identify repeated patterns relating on sustainability, adoptions, worker safety, and stakeholder influence. One strength of this method is that it provides a broad understanding of industry-wide issues by combining evidence from different perspectives. However, I also recognizing an important limitations. Since the study depended on secondary data, I had limited control over the relativity, reliability, and the consistency of the organizational sources. This means the findings should be interpreted as analytical insights rather than fully general conclusions. One of the most important findings was that sustainability adoption across the industry is highly uneven. Large export-oriented firms generally showed stronger implementation of green supply chain management because they have greater financial resources, stronger buyers relationships, and better technological capacity. In, in contrast, SMEs often struggle due to cost pressures and limited instrumental support. At the same time, the finding shows that the worker continue to experience serious health problems, also the illness, chemical explosions, and the injuries. This suggests that sustainability improvement are still not reaching all the workers equality across the industry. The findings also shows that sustainability practices can positively improve worker health and safety when they are implemented effectively. Clear production system, ventilation improvements, PP provisions, and safety training all contribute to reducing workplace risks. However, the relationship was not always consistent because some companies appear to adopt sustainability mainly for compliance purpose. I also found that external stakeholders play a major role in driving sustainability adoption. International buyers, NGOs, and regulators often create the pressures that process farms towards the complaints, especially after international criticism following the Rana Plaza disaster. In the discussion, I connected the findings back to the theoretical framework. The research support the idea that sustainability practices can reduce occupational risks and improve workplace conditions. When organizations generally integrate them into the operations. However, the findings also demonstrate that sustainability outcomes depend heavily on organizational capacity. Large firms perform better because they have stronger infrastructure and financial resources, whereas SMEs faces structural barriers that limited implementations. This suggests that sustainability in the Bangladeshi RMG sector is not only an environmental issue but also an industrial and economical issue. A major insight from the study is the presence of symbolic or tick box compliance. Many firms appear to adopt sustainability practices mainly to satisfy international expectations rather than creating long-term organizational change. This strong supports legitimacy theory because companies seek to maintain reputation and buyer confidence. At the same time, stakeholder theory is reflected through the influence of buyers, NGOs, and regulator on organizational decisions. However, weak enforcement system and institutional limitation continue to reduce the effectiveness of sustainability initiatives. Therefore, sustainability alone is not enough unless implementation is properly monitored and into a company culture. Overall, the study concludes that sustainable manufacturing practices can improve worker health and safety within Bangladesh garment sector, but the impact depends greatly on the qualitative of implementation. Sustainability initiatives are most effective when they move beyond short-term compliance and become the part of the long-term organizational strategy. The research also highlight major inequalities between large firms and small and medium enterprises, showing that institutional support remains essential for wider industry improvement. Ultimately, sustainability should not only protect business reputation but also create safer and healthier working environment for employees. Based on the findings, I recommended stronger regulatory enforcement and more consistent monitoring trolling to reduce symbolic compliance. Greater financial and technical support should be provided to small medium enterprises so they can adopt sustainability technologies more effectively. In addition, factories should invest more in ventilation system improvements and worker safety training because this directly affect employees well-being. I also believe independent verification is important for improving transparency in CSR practices. Finally, sustainability should be integrated into long-term business strategy rather than treated a short-term response to external pressure.